This week, NASCAR goes from the smallest track to the biggest, baddest track on the circuit. This is the Geico 500 at Talladega Superspeedway. I'm Robert Young, and welcome to the NASCAR Talladega edition of the HiveCast. Joining me again this week is fellow NASCAR fan John Newton. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing very good. How about you?
I'm doing good, and thank you for coming back onto the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me back.
All right, now let's go ahead and get started with a little recap of what happened at Martinsville. The ultimate winner at Martinsville, it was Kyle Larson, and he got his second win of the season this at Martinsville. So, what did you think of his performance at the racetrack?
He impressed me a lot because he had a very good day starting in the top 10. There was kind of more or less a sleeper. I know, the Stewart-Haas Racing Fords was able to, just pretty much dominate all day.
Yeah, I mean, that was one kind of thing that I was shocked by, was that Stewart-Haas didn't actually win the whole thing, because they were doing good in practice, qualifying, and in the early parts of the race.
Right, all four of them qualified in the top 7, with Kevin Harvick starting 7th, the lowest of that camp.
Yeah. So I was kind of disappointed in Stewart-Haas for not being able to pull it through.
They had very good effort. The ultimate what killed him was Ryan Preece was fast all day. Then he got that speed and penalty.
And then some poor decisions in pit road basically was what led them to.
Right. With the track driving like a conveyor belt where it was hard to pass at the back.
Yeah.
Unless your name is Ryan Blaney.
Yeah.
Ryan Blaney went from 31st to 13th in 80 laps with no caution help.
Yeah, and speaking of cautions, that late caution caused by Anthony Alfredo due to the out of control tire, that saved quite a few guys, including I believe Ryan Blaney was on the list.
Right.
And Joey Logano, who finished second in the race.
From starting dead last after finding a leak that happened overnight, and they had to replace something there.
Yeah.
And they had to start dead last, come back to finish second. Actually gave up the lead late to Kyle Larson.
I will say that was a good comeback by Joey Logano.
I will give Logano credit. I feel like Logano's your ultimate winner out of this, showing how good that Penske camp is running right now.
Yeah.
And a very good way to establish the fact that he is your reigning NASCAR Cup Series champion.
Yeah, that's very true. All right. Now, after Martinsville, the top 10 in point standings, first place is surprisingly I don't know if it's surprising, but it's at least not one that you often see in the top of the point standings. Christopher Bell in the 20.
I know Joe Gibbs Racing has really picked it up on the short track streak with solid results at Richmond.
Yeah, Denny Hamlin getting his first stage win at Richmond, too.
Then Christopher Bell winning the Food City Dirt Race.
Yeah.
Not Food City Dirt Race.
Well, it's called that, basically.
The dirt race at Bristol.
Yeah.
With a hard charging Tyler Reddick in the closing few laps. Now I think it was Josh Berry and Ross Chastain collided on the final lap, and NASCAR threw the caution.
Yeah. Again, that one car was roped up in another caution. But
it's all Chastain's fault.
Speaking of the one car, he's actually in second in the point standings. So he's there. He's just not quite gotten the win yet. So
Ross Chastain was having a very good start to the year, except for the dirt race. Was actually, I think, leading the standings amidst the penalties.
Yeah, he was at that point, and
a very good year for Chastain so far.
Yeah. Now Kevin Harvick is third for Stewart-Haas Racing, and
the highest Ford so far.
Yep. And then finally we have our last race winner, Kyle Larson, in fourth.
That's not a surprise. I figured I actually expect Larson to be a little higher up. Again, 2 wins in the last 3 races, but like I said, the penalties is what hurt that Hendrick camp.
I mean, they had most of the penalties revoked, but then it was his teammates Byron and Bowman got the brunt of the other penalties. So
Then you have Martin Truex Jr. rounding out the top 5.
Yep, hasn't won a single race, but yet he's up in the top 5. He's been there. He nearly had a shot at winning the last race at Martinsville, right?
Then you have Tyler Reddick for 23XI Racing.
Yep, won at Coda. He nearly won at Bristol, and he's taking that 45 ride pretty good.
Then you have the reigning Cup Series champion Joey Logano.
And then after that, surprisingly, it fits him because that's his car number. Kyle Busch in 8th place.
Then 9th you have Denny Hamlin.
And then finally rounding out the top 10 is Ryan Blaney in the 12th.
Then the first guy outside the top 10 in 11th is another Hendrick Chevrolet with Alex Bowman.
And then finally 12th place is Brad Keselowski in the number 6 RFK car.
Then 13th is the Daytona 500 Series champion Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
And then Chase Briscoe in 14th place.
Then
finally, it is William Byron in the 24 and 15th. And that is pretty much that's a lot. That's a amount of talent right there.
That very talented top 15 in points. I feel like right now it's just so neck and neck that we could see somebody from like 16th or something like that take the points. That's what I like about the next gen car is producing better racing, I feel like.
And it's also intended to make the teams a little bit more equal and as far as performance goes. Not necessarily saying that they all can win, but they at least have a better shot at doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? Maybe a driver from a future RWR car might win. I don't know.
Now, on to some surprising finishers from Martinsville is, of course, in his first race back, Chase Elliott gets 10th.
Yeah, great comeback for Chase Elliott. I will give Josh Berry some credit. He did do good when he was driving a 9, but it's nice to see Chase Elliott back in that number.
Then in 9th, you have somewhat of a surprise, Bubba Wallace, who started 8th and actually lost a position.
Yeah, I mean, Bubba's he's been there. He's yet to prove himself this year, but I feel that he could probably win at least one race this season.
Look for that 23 car up front this weekend at Talladega.
Yeah, that's right. Talladega is coming up next, and that's one thing you got to watch out for is the accursed big one. Happens almost every single time at Talladega.
Then another good super speedway racer who finished in the top 10, Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Yeah, he is pretty good at super speedway racing. I think he got his first win at Talladega a few years back, right?
I'm willing to say that or Daytona.
Yeah, I think it was Talladega. He was still driving a 17 at that point, so we know that's changed.
For Roush Fenway.
Yeah, not RFK.
Now, looking forward to Talladega. What are some details about the track that you can give us, Robbie?
Well, for starters, it's probably the biggest and baddest track on the NASCAR circuit.
It is a whopping 2.66 miles, the longest oval on the NASCAR Cup Series circuit.
And I've heard some cases that it might just be the biggest oval on the planet.
Right.
Oval track on the planet because it's just so massive and the speeds are just ridiculous whenever you get over there.
Looking close to, you'll see speeds this weekend pushing 200 miles per hour.
Yeah, back before they had these restrictor plates, they used to go like 211 miles per hour at speeds.
And the fastest speed a NASCAR has ever gone was 212.6 miles per hour by Bill Elliott at Talladega.
Yeah, that's pretty fast. That's close to IndyCar level fast.
That is.
And so, you ever want to see why open wheel doesn't race at those types of tracks? That's why. Because they're just too fast for those cars to handle. Now, who do you think are some big names to win it this weekend at Talladega?
Obviously, you got your people like Michael McDowell, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Bubba Wallace.
All right, and I will say that one guy that he's not doing well so far this year, but he has come very close to winning at Talladega in the past. The 43 of Eric Jones.
Wow. I know that while I was filling out my fantasy lineup this morning for NASCAR, like on the bottom, give you like who's hot, who's cold, and like they even had Eric Jones as like the sleeper pick they do on there. So,
Yeah, because he has done very well at this track before. He's come so close so many times with that 43,
Right.
but just fell short of it.
Then another name that you could throw in there is Corey LaJoie.
Yeah, and Ross Chastain winning it last year, I will
Right.
say that he has a good shot at it too.
Kyle Larson.
Yep.
Well-
And all right, but let's cut to the chase here. Who do you think will win next week's race?
23XI is going to lock both of their cars into the playoffs. Bubba Wallace wins. He, in his first Daytona 500, he finished second. His first full-time Daytona 500, second in 2018. Won the Talladega playoff race in 2021. Got his first career win by some people would say controversial circumstances, but I don't think so. Ran well at Atlanta last year.
And won last year again at, what was it, Kansas, right?
Kansas. So very overall good driver who has proven himself to be a playoff, a super speedway winning caliber driver. So I'm going Bubba Wallace wins it this week. Now who do you think is going to win it?
Now, I think that I'll add this as another big name that we could mention about, because this guy, he has won many times at Talladega in the past, and he hasn't won yet with his new team. I'm going to go with Brad Keselowski in the 6.
Oh, that is a very good pick.
Because you remember that he won his first race at Talladega, and he has been consistent with it all throughout his career.
Then I think he won his last race at Penske at Talladega.
Yeah, that was right, back in 2021. So I think he's going to win at Talladega.
All right.
Now, if people want to find you on YouTube, how can they do that?
You can go to the YouTube search bar, look up John Newton, that is Jon space Newton. Then I'll leave a comment on the video. They can click the icon. Then if you want to, then what I'm mainly doing right now is like my final lap reactions and like my post race little recap, just talking about if you missed it.
All right. Thank you for coming on the show, John. It was great having you here.
Thank you.
Now here is an update from this past week. Back at Phoenix, Hendrick Motorsports was hit very hard by NASCAR for illegal modifications found on the hood louvers. But they weren't the only team to be slammed with a penalty that weekend. Calling Racing's number 31, that is driven by Justin Haley, was also penalized for the same exact reason. Like Hendrick, they appealed their penalty. However, unlike Hendrick, their penalty was actually upheld by the National Motorsports Appeal Panel. But on Tuesday, it was announced that Colin Racing's final appeal was approved and the point deduction was removed from their penalty. However, the interesting thing is that NASCAR themselves asked the panel to consider removing the points deduction for Colin. They basically asked the panel to go against their own penalty. That sounds crazy, right? Well, I believe that NASCAR did this in order to make the penalties for both Hendrick and Colin equal and fair for both sides. Kudos to NASCAR for making this decision. Hey listeners, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, email them to matthew.collier@lcsd.k12.sc.us. That's matthew.collier@lcsd.k12.sc.us. I will read them in the next episode. Well, that's all for this edition of the HiveCast. I'm Robert Young saying, crank it up boys, let's go racing!